Jake was just closing his repair shop for the night. The sky was turning dark, and the alley behind his shop smelled like old trash and oil. As he threw out the last bag of garbage, he heard something strange. Not a cat, not a rat, it sounded like a child crying. He froze and listened. The sound came again, soft and broken, like someone trying not to be heard. Jake walked slowly to the back wall. Behind two large metal dumpsters, he saw something hidden under a dirty tarp. He moved the tarp and stepped back in shock. It was a cage. Inside the cage was a small girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with soft glowing skin and big purple eyes. Her hair looked silver in the moonlight. She wasn't human. Beside her sat a woman with the same glowing skin, though her body looked thin and tired. She held the girl close with one arm. The other arm had bruises and cuts. Jake whispered, "What the hell?" The girl looked up at him. Her lips trembled. Her voice was weak but clear. "Can I have a dad now, please?" Jake felt like the world stopped moving. He didn't know what to say. His heart beat fast. Who would leave a child in a cage like this? He looked around. The alley was empty. "Who did this to you?" he asked. The woman didn't answer. She only shook her head slowly and pulled the girl closer. Her eyes showed fear, not just of Jake, but of everything. Jake knelt beside the cage and spoke softly. "I'm not here to hurt you. My name is Jake. Do you need help?" The girl nodded. The woman didn't speak, but she didn't stop him either. Jake saw a small lock on the cage door. He stood up, went inside his shop, and grabbed his tool bag. Within seconds, he returned and used a bolt cutter to break the lock. As the cage door opened, the woman flinched. Jake raised both hands to show he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said gently. "You're free now." The girl crawled out first, her tiny bare feet touching the cold concrete. Then she turned and helped her mother out. The woman struggled to stand, but Jake caught her before she fell. She was light, to light like someone who hadn't eaten in days. Jake brought them inside his shop. It wasn't much, just an old couch, a heater, and a tiny kitchen in the corner, but it was warm and safe. He gave them water and a blanket. The girl sat on the couch, wrapping the blanket around her mother. Her eyes never left Jake. Jake sat down on a stool, trying to understand what just happened. "Do you have a name?" he asked the girl. She nodded. "Alaya." Jake smiled. "That's a pretty name." He turned to the mother. "And you?" The woman hesitated, then whispered Rava. Her voice was rough, like it hadn't been used in a long time. Jake looked. Between them. "Where did you come from? Who locked you up like that?" Rava stayed silent. She glanced at the door like she expected someone to come through any second. Jake leaned forward. "You're safe here, I promise. But I need to know if someone's coming after you," Rava finally said. "They wanted to sell us. But we weren't useful anymore. So they left us behind." Jake felt a cold anger build in his chest. "Sold, like slaves." Rava nodded once. Alaya whispered. "He said nobody would buy broken things." Jake clenched his fists. This wasn't just wrong, it was evil. He stood up and walked to a cabinet. He pulled out some canned food and bread. He warmed it on the stove and handed it to them. Alaya smiled for the first time as she took a bite. Rava ate slowly, her hands shaking. Jake watched them and felt something strange in his chest. It's not just pity, something stronger. It's a need to protect. That night, he gave them the couch and slept on the floor. But before he turned off the lights, Alaya said something again. "Are you my dad now?" Jake looked at her. He didn't answer, but in his heart, something already had. Jake woke up to a sound, soft footsteps moving in the dark. He sat up fast, heart pounding. The old repair shop was quiet, but something felt off. He grabbed the flashlight near his mat and clicked it on. The beam landed on Alaya. She stood in the middle of the room, holding a blanket that dragged behind her. Her eyes were wide, glowing. Faintly in the darkness, she was shaking. "I had a bad dream," she said. Jake stood up slowly and knelt beside her. "What happened?" She looked down. "They put us back in the cage, and Mama was gone." Jake touched her shoulder gently. You're not in the cage anymore. You're safe now. But Alaya looked him straight in the eyes and whispered, People lie about safe. Jake felt that hit him deep. He looked toward the couch where Rava still slept, her body curled tightly, one arm around a bag she wouldn't let go of. He brought Alaya a warm mug of milk and sat with her near the heater. For a long time she didn't speak. Then she asked, Why did you open the cage? Jake replied, Because no one deserves to be locked up like that. Not you, not your mom. Alaya tilted her head. Even if we're aliens? Jake gave a small smile. You're a girl who needed help. That's all I saw. She nodded, slowly sipping the milk. Later. When she finally dozed off on the rug near the heater, Jake looked at her tiny hand gripping the edge of his jacket. She didn't even know him, but she was already holding on like he was the only thing. Between her and the dark, he barely slept that night. Morning came too fast. Jake got up early and made some eggs and toast. Rava was awake now, sitting up, watching his every move like a soldier trapped in enemy land. He placed a plate in front of her. Eat, please. She nodded and started to eat. It was the first time he saw her take a full breath. I need to know something, Jake said, sitting across from her. Do you have anywhere to go? Rava looked down. Her voice was quiet but clear. No. What about family? Someone who can help? She shook her head. They're gone. Jake didn't ask how. He already had a feeling the answer was ugly. Then stay here just for a while, he said. I'll figure something out. Rava looked him in the eyes for the first time. You don't know what you've done, human. Jake leaned back. Maybe not. Odd. But I know I couldn't leave a kid begging for a dad behind a dumpster. Rava said nothing more, but she didn't argue either. That afternoon, Jake tried to act like things were normal. He worked on a broken hover engine, kept his shop door open like always, and waved at the mailman like it was any other day. But inside, his mind raced. Who put them in that cage? Were they being followed? How long until someone knocked on his door? When he went back inside, Alaya was coloring something on a scrap of cardboard. It was a picture of 3 people standing under a roof. A small girl, a tall man, and a woman with stars around her hair. Jake pointed at the man. Is that me? Alaya smiled. You don't look like that. But it's what I think a dad should look like. Jake chuckled. Big muscles, huh? She nodded, then asked, Can you fight monsters? Jake hesitated. Depends on the monster. Her eyes dimmed. These ones don't have claws, but they take things. Like Mama's voice, my home, my safety. Jake didn't laugh this time. Rava suddenly stood. Her body was tense, like she heard. Something. Jake followed her eyes to the window. A black hover van had parked across the street. 2 men in gray coats stepped out. They didn't knock. They just stood and looked around. Rava whispered, They're here. Jake quickly grabbed Alaya and moved her behind the counter. Hide. Don't make a sound, he said. He walked outside, locking the door behind him. His hands were sweaty. He tried to act calm. The men approached. One had a scanner in his hand. The other held a photo. You live here? One asked. Yeah, Jake replied. Seen anything strange? The man asked, showing a blurry image of a woman and child. Jake looked at it. His face didn't change. Nope, he said. Just old engines and broken machines. The men looked past him toward the shop. Jake stood firm. After a pause, the man with the scanner said, If you do see them, don't hide it. That would be a serious crime, Jake smiled. I'm just a mechanic, not a hero. They nodded and walked off, but Jake saw one of them glance at the dumpster where the cage had been. That night, Rava sat close to the window, holding something. Hidden under her sleeve, a sharp tool she had taken from Jake's workbench. Jake didn't ask why. Alaya, half asleep on the couch, whispered again before drifting off. Thank you for not giving us back. Jake looked at her, then at Rava. Don't give people back, he said. I give them a home. The first window broke at 3 a.m., Jake jumped up from the floor with a sharp breath. Glass scattered across the repair shop. Alaya screamed, her voice full of terror. Rava grabbed her daughter and pressed her to the floor, shielding her with her. Jake rushed to the window with a wrench in his hand. Outside, under the flickering alley lights, a man stood staring straight at the shop. He didn't move, didn't blink. His eyes looked blank, like something inside was missing. Then he slowly lifted a small black device to his mouth and spoke. "They're here." Jake didn't wait. He locked the main door, pulled the couch over it, and turned to Rava. "We need to leave now." Rava nodded fast. She wrapped Alaya in a coat and lifted a cloth bag from under the table. She had been waiting for this moment. "How did they find us?" Jake asked, stuffing tools and food into a backpack. "They always find us," Rava said, her voice hard. "That's what they're built for." Jake glanced back at the broken window. The man was still there. But now 2 more were joining him, both dressed the same, both with the same lifeless faces. They weren't just people, they were trackers. They slipped out the back door into the cold, dark alley. Rava moved fast, her daughter clinging to her back. Jake followed close, holding a metal rod in one hand, ready to fight if he had to. "We go to the freight yard," Jake said. "An old friend works the night shift. If we're lucky, we can hide in one of the junk trains." Rava didn't argue. The city was sleeping, but Jake felt every shadow watching. Every corner might have more of those men with empty eyes. "Who are they?" he asked as they ran across a quiet street. "Hunters," Rava said, "paid to collect runaways, even across galaxies. They never speak, never stop." And Alaya, "Why her?" Rava didn't answer right away. Her silence was louder than words. At the edge of the freight yard, they stopped. Jake checked the gate. Locked. He reached into his backpack, pulled out a mini cutter, and sliced through the chain. It took too long. Every second felt like a scream. They slipped through and ran between rows of rusted train cars. Jake led them toward one he used to fix years ago. He remembered the hatch still worked. This way. He climbed first, then reached down for Alaya and Rava. Inside, it was cold and smelled like oil and dust, but it was dark and hidden. They waited. Minutes passed. Then hours. Finally, Rava spoke, her voice trembling. "I was part of a movement, people trying to stop the trade of children like Alaya." Jake stared at her. "They took me, punished me, and when they saw Alaya's blood, they saw value." Frowned. "What do you mean Alaya is not just a child? She's a hybrid, human and alien. They think she's the next step. It's a perfect product." Jake felt his stomach turn. "You mean they want to sell her?" "No," Rava said, eyes cold. "They want a breeder." Jake's hand gripped the metal rod tighter. He had seen horrible things before, but this was worse than war. He looked at Alaya, who had fallen asleep curled beside an old crate, tiny fingers still gripping the broken toy she always carried. "She thinks I'm her dad, Jake," whispered. Rava looked at him. "She needs one." Jake didn't know what to say. He wanted to protect her, but he didn't even know where they could go next. Suddenly, sound made them freeze. Footsteps. Jake peeked through the vent in the side of the train car. One of the men in gray was walking along the tracks, scanning with a small glowing device. Another followed behind him. They were checking every car. Jake turned to Rava. "We have to move again." She shook her head. "There's no time." Alaya stirred and opened her eyes. "What's happening?" Jake kneeled and put a finger to his lips. Just stay quiet, okay?" Alaya nodded and crawled into his arms. Outside, the footsteps stopped. The device beeped. A voice spoke. "They're close." Jake held his breath. Then, loud and clear, another voice called from far away. "Hey, you're not allowed in there." Security guard. The trackers didn't respond, but the delay gave Jake time. He opened the hatch and dropped to the ground. "Go," he whispered. They ran through a gap in the fence and into the nearby woods. Branches tore at their clothes. But they didn't stop running. By dawn, they reached an old gas station deep in the forest. Jake knew the place. It had been closed for years, but the basement was dry. Then it had a steel door. They climbed down and closed the hatch behind them. Alaya sat on a crate and looked up at Jake. Will they come again? Jake looked at her and said, let them. This time they won't win. The lighter flickered in Jake's hand, casting soft light across the basement walls. Rava wrapped Alaya in a blanket, her hand still shaking from the run. They were safe. For now, but no one spoke that word out loud. Jake poured water into a cracked cup and handed it to Rava. Her eyes were wide open, watching the metal hatch above them like it could swing open any second. Alaya sat beside her mother, quiet, but Jake noticed something strange. She was staring at her own hands. Alaya? Jake knelt beside her. Are you hurt? She looked at him, then turned her palms to show him. Her skin was glowing, just a little like faint blue fire under the surface. Jake had seen alien traits before, but nothing like this. Her glow didn't look natural. It looked like something was waking up. I feel warm, she whispered. But not bad, like I swallowed the sun. Jake looked at Rava. Her expression said everything. Fear, recognition, regret. You knew this would happen, Jake said. Rava nodded slowly. It runs in her blood. She was supposed to stay hidden until she turned 13, but stress, fear, pain, it speeds things up. Jake sat back. Speeds what up? Rava said. Taking her daughter's hand is what they call a Starborn. Only 1 in a billion. Half human, half Aurelian. Her blood can power machines. Her mind can touch systems. Her energy can bend weapons. Jake stared at them both. She's not just a child, no, Rava said. She's a weapon they want to control. Outside the forest gas station, the trackers returned. They scanned the earth, moved like ghosts, quiet and fast. One of them paused near a fallen tree. The signal is changing, he said. She's awakening. Inside the basement, Jake checked. His tools laid out a broken pulse gun, a battery cell, and some wire. He'd fought in battles before, but never for something this personal. I know someone, he said. He's not safe, but he hates the system that made these monsters. He can hide us. Rava looked at him. Will he help a girl with a glowing heart? Jake smiled. If I ask him right. They left just after sunset. Rava rode behind Jake on the back of an old terrain bike, holding Alaya between them. The road was broken, narrow, and full of roots. But Jake drove like it was the only thing keeping them alive. After an hour, they reached an abandoned water plant built into the side of a rocky hill. Jake banged on a steel door 5 times, paused, then knocked twice more. A panel slid open. A single yellow eye stared back. Jake Harper, the voice said. You've got guts coming here. I need a place, Jake answered. For them. The door creaked open. The man inside wasn't human. He was tall, with armored skin and 3 mechanical arms. His name was Creel, a smuggler, a former war rebel, a man Jake once saved in a storm. Rava held Alaya tightly. She's glowing, Creel said, looking at the child. That's trouble, Jake replied. Then keep it safe, Creel growled. But waved them inside. The underground base was full of machines, wires, and blinking lights. Creel took them to a side room where they could rest. She can't go outside now, he warned. She glows too much. Satellites will pick her up. Jake nodded. Carol pulled Jake aside. You even know what she is? Is there people? Who would burn planets just to take her? Jake looked at the sleeping girl. Then we'll burn them first. The next morning, the lights in the base flickered. Creel shouted, Something's drawing power. Alaya stood near the reactor, eyes closed, body floating an inch off the floor. Energy moved through the wires like waves. Jake called her name, Alaya. She opened her eyes. They were pure gold now. I'm sorry, she whispered. It was calling me. She fell into his arms unconscious. Rava knelt beside them. This is just the beginning. Jake turned to Creel. Can you stop them from tracking her? Creel nodded, maybe for a while. Then give me everything you've got, Jake said, standing up. Because I'm going to make sure no one ever cages her again. But outside the compound, deep in space, signal pulsed through the stars. An auction had begun, and Alaya's name was on the list. The stars above a distant moon pulsed like cold fire. In a hidden part of the galaxy, a hall filled with silence and gold waited for one thing: Alaya. On a massive screen, still image of her face flickered. Half human, half Aurelian. A voice announced, "Carrier of Starborn blood. Opening bid. 10 million credits." Bidders from across systems. Generals, kings, warlords raised their hands. One of them asked her age. Not one asked if she wanted this, because she was no longer seen as a child to them. She was a power source in a child's body. Back on Earth, deep inside the bunker, Alaya sat on the floor, staring at the walls. She hadn't spoken in hours. Since she touched the reactor, she hadn't even cried. Jake watched her. Something inside her had changed. She looked like a child still, but her silence felt ancient. He brought her food. She didn't eat. Just touched the plate with her finger, and the bread warmed by itself. Rava sat nearby, eyes red from lack of sleep. She's starting to lose her voice, she whispered. Every time her power grows, her words grow weaker. Jake stared. And what happens when her words are gone? She becomes what they want her to be, a tool, Rava replied. Jake stood up fast. No, not while I breathe. Creel entered the room holding a glowing disc. The auction has started. They've already made the first call to Earth. She has until nightfall. Jake stepped forward. We leave now. Rava looked shocked. Where can we go? To the only place they won't dare follow, Jake said. Jake's plan was madness, but it was the only way. He would take Alaya to the Black Forest, a restricted zone full of old war machines and cursed tech. No satellite could scan inside, no signal could pass through. Many believed the forest was haunted by the dead from the last intergalactic war. But Jake knew the truth. He had fought there once, and he knew where the shields were buried. They left in a stolen hover truck, the sky turning gray as ash above them. Alaya sat in the back seat, eyes closed, her hands glowing like soft candles. She spoke just once, and it was to Jake. You said you'd be my dad. Jake looked at her through the mirror. I meant it. Then don't let them take me. I won't, he promised. But far above them, a satellite locked onto her. Energy signature. A black ship broke through Earth's atmosphere. At the edge of the Black Forest, everything turned cold. Machines buried under the ground hummed faintly. No birds, no wind, just silence. Jake guided them through a broken metal gate with alien symbols. This is it.
Creel,
who had followed in a second vehicle, stepped beside him. The shields only last if the core inside the ruins is still working. If it's dead, you'll have no cover. Jake nodded. Then I'll restart it. They moved fast, dodging debris and broken towers. Alaya's glow dimmed the deeper they went. In the center of the forest stood a black stone, smooth, silent, ancient. Jake placed his hand on it. The stone lit up blue. Behind him, Creel shouted, Signal blocked. You did it. For a moment, Jake felt hope, but then thunder, not from the sky. From the ground, machines awakened. Tall, rust-covered guardians rose. From beneath the forest floor, war robots left behind decades ago. Their eyes blinked red. Intruders detected, K1 said in a broken voice. Jake grabbed Alaya and ran. They hid inside a cracked bunker. Just as one of the robots fired a beam that melted the stone beside them, Alaya began to glow again, brighter. Now don't, Rava shouted. You'll attract them. Not trying, Alaya whispered. It hurts. Jake turned to her, and let me take it. She looked confused. What do you mean? Jake placed his hand on hers. The light burned, but he didn't pull away. I'm your dad, he said. Let me carry part of it. Alaya's glow shifted, split. Half of it moved through Jake's arm. His body shook. He dropped to his knees, but stayed conscious, and for the first time in hours, Alaya smiled. I don't feel alone anymore. Outside the bunker, the war robots paused. Something ancient in them recognized the signal. Not enemy, not protector. The red lights in their eyes turned white, and the signal from the auction was lost. Back on the ship orbiting Earth, the buyer smashed his screen. Find them. Care if you burn the forest down? But the Black Forest was no longer silent. It had chosen Jake as one of its own. The war machines didn't speak again. They stood like silent giants around the bunker, guarding it as if they remembered Jake from a battle long buried in their memory banks. But Jake had never commanded them. He had only touched Eliah's hand, and now something inside him had changed. Jake's arm still glowed where Eliah's energy had entered him. His skin shimmered faintly in the dark, like it carried pieces of starlight. Rava touched his wrist, gently, afraid. Your body is changing, she said. Humans aren't made to carry that kind of power. Jake breathed slowly. Then I'll carry it until I can't. Rava shook her head. You'll die if you hold it too long. I'd rather die than let them take her. She stared at him with quiet eyes. You sound like her real father now. Jake didn't answer because deep down he already felt like one. Eliah slept peacefully for the first time in days. Her light was dim now, resting quiet inside her chest. Jake sat beside her while Creel rigged the outer bunker with scanners. Don't get it, Creel muttered. Why would the machines obey you? They were designed to follow our Relian bloodlines only. Jake looked down at his glowing hand. Maybe they don't see me. Maybe they see her through me. Then, protect her with your life, Creel said, 'cause ships are already inbound. Big ones. If they break through this forest, we're out of time. Back in orbit, a fleet gathered. One of the warlords slammed his hand on the table. The child is in the forest. Send the fire drones. But the last time we entered the Black Forest, a soldier warned, we lost 6 squads. I don't care, the warlord growled. That girl is worth more than this entire planet. And the fire fell from the sky. Jake saw it first. A red streak cutting across the clouds. Missiles, he shouted. They're bombing the perimeter. Creel cursed. The machines will wake again. We won't be able to hold them all off. Rava grabbed Eliah. We have to move. No, Jake said. We go to the heart. Creel's eyes went wide. You're insane. The heart is sealed. No one's entered it since the war. I have her, Jake said, looking at Eliah, and the forest listens to her. Rava nodded. It might be the only safe place left. They ran under broken towers and past old mechs half buried in the dirt. Smoke and fire rained down as drones scanned the trees. Every sensor they passed blinked blue instead of red. Eliah walked at Jake's side now. Though her legs were small, she never slowed. Her voice was soft, but steady. I can feel it calling me. The forest, the machines, the old ones. Jake held her hand tighter. Then let's go where it wants you. At the heart of the forest stood a dome, half stone, half metal, covered in vines and roots. A door waited, sealed with symbols glowing faint gold. Eliah stepped forward. The door scanned her face. Then it opened. Inside was light. Warm, white light. The air smelled clean. The ground hummed under their feet. Screens flickered on as they walked through. Data poured across the walls. Maps. Names. Blueprints of ancient weapons. At the center stood a platform. This is the core, Rava whispered. This is where they made the first protectors. Eliah climbed the steps slowly. The core lit up, but gently, like it recognized her heartbeat. She sat down, cross-legged, and closed her eyes, and the entire forest changed. Outside, drones dropped dead from the sky. War machines kneeled. The fire in the sky stopped midair. Frozen like glass, Jake stood in awe. She's controlling all of it. She's not a weapon, Rava whispered. She's a queen. But power always calls power far above. In a deep shadow ship, a final hunter activated. He wasn't a machine. He wasn't a man. He was both. Half metal, half flesh. No heart, no mercy. He had no name, only a mission. And he spoke just one sentence. Bring me the child and burn the rest. Not inside the core, Alea opened her eyes. They're coming, she said. A hunter, stronger than the rest. Jake stepped forward. Then we fight. You'll die, she said, touching his hand. But I don't want you to. Jake knelt in front of her. I told you I'd be your dad. That means I stand between you and every monster that wants to hurt you, no matter what." She looked at him with tears in her glowing eyes. "Then I'll stand with you." Rava placed her hands on Alaya's shoulders. "And so will I." Creel cocked his blaster. "Guess I'm family now, too." Deep in the forest, the trees began to shift. The old war towers rose once again, because this wasn't just a child hiding anymore, it was a home being defended. The wind stopped moving. Sky held its breath, and then he came. The hunter dropped into the forest like thunder wrapped in armor. His metal feet cracked the ground. His voice echoed across the trees like a machine with a human soul. "Give me the girl." Inside the heart of the forest, Alaya sat on the glowing platform, still and calm, her hands resting on her knees. Jake stood between her and the entrance, gripping the old plasma weapon Creel had rebuilt. The gun shook slightly in his hands. Rava watched through a scanner, whispering every movement the hunter made. "He's close," she said. "He's not like the others. He burns everything." Jake nodded, then let him come. "We're not running." This time, the door of the core opened with a hiss. The hunter stepped through, tall and silent. Half of his face was bone. The other half was a smooth black plate. His eyes glowed white like dead stars. Jake stepped forward. "She's not yours." The hunter didn't blink. "You are nothing, just flesh and fire." Jake smiled. "Then you've already lost." Without warning, Jake fired. The blast hit the hunter straight in the chest. It exploded, but the creature walked right through it, smoke trailing off his armor. Creel shot next, aiming for the joints. Sparks flew, but the hunter didn't fall. Then came Rava. She struck him with a shock rod, jumping from the side, but the hunter grabbed her and threw her hard into the wall. "Alaya, run!" Jake shouted. But Alaya did not move. She stood up slowly, eyes glowing gold, and stepped forward. The air changed. The machines inside the core turned toward her. The forest outside pulsed with light. Alaya raised her hand. "I said no." The hunter stopped. His legs locked. The lights on his body flickered. She stepped closer, voice louder. "You don't get to decide who I belong to. I choose." Jake watched in awe as vines and wires from the core wrapped around the hunter's feet. The floor under him cracked. Roots grew fast, wrapping around his body like chains. Alaya's glow grew brighter, filling the chamber with golden fire. The hunter screamed, not in pain, but in fear. Then he exploded into pieces, not from force, but from rejection. The core itself spat him out. Silence returned. Jake dropped to his knees, breathing hard. His arm burned where the energy still lived inside him. Rava stood slowly, limping but alive. Creel stared at the empty space where the hunter had been, and Alaya. She stood in the center of it all, glowing softly, like a sun that had just risen. Jake looked up at her. "You saved us." She looked back, her small face serious. "No, we saved each other." Later that evening, the core dimmed. The machines returned to sleep. The forest began to grow quietly again. Jake stood at the edge of the platform, watching Alaya draw stars on the dusty floor with her finger. She looked peaceful now, like a real child again. Rava walked beside him. "She doesn't glow as much." "Now," Jake nodded. "She let some of the fire go." Rava turned to him. "You didn't have to stay. You could have walked away from all this." Jake looked at Alaya, then said, "She asked me once, 'Can I have a dad now?'" He paused, voice steady, and I realized that I already was. Rava placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then let's give her a life worth fighting for." Days passed, then weeks. No more ships came, no more trackers. Alaya helped the forest grow again. She built a small garden near the core's entrance. She laughed when Creel tried to cook. She slept soundly beside Rava each night, no longer crying in her sleep. And Jake. Jake stayed. He fixed machines. He taught Alaya how to fish. He built her a swing out of old metal cables, and every night before she slept, she whispered, "Good night, Dad." Back in the dark corners of the galaxy, people whispered of a girl who could control machines. Some called her a myth. Some searched for her, but they never found the heart of the forest again, because the core had closed its door, and the girl inside had already chosen her family, not by blood, but by love. She had been locked in a cage once, begging for a father. Now she had won, not because he was assigned to her, but because when she reached out, he reached back and never let go.